It's time to talk about a man, a myth, and a legend of the Japanese light novel industry. Those who follow my channel should be familiar with this person, but even we the fans of his work know little about who he actually is. And if you're not a fan of his work, this video should still be interesting to you nonetheless, because this author is not only mysterious, but also one of the most intriguing authors in the history of the Japanese light novel industry, and I'm not exaggerating at all. His most famous works include A Certain Magical Index, A Certain Scientific Railgun, although Railgun is a manga, and A Heavy Object. And this author is a titan of the industry when considering Index is one of the best-selling light novels of all time, and taking into account the entire franchise has outsold SAO in Japan, which is kinda baffling considering how popular SAO is as a whole, and how Index isn't a very popular series in the West in comparison to SAO. So this author created one of the best-selling light novels of all time, but also one of the most critically acclaimed light novels of all time. Index won the award of the best light novel in 10 years in Kono Light Novel ga Sugoi, a magazine which surveys fans to determine the best light novel and light novel characters. And Index won this award in 2014, having placed in the top 10 more times than SAO, and Misaka Makoto, one of the main cast of Index, winning the best female character more times than any other girl, and that includes Asuna. While this is all impressive, what intrigues me more is the personality of the author and his methodology for writing Index and building one of the most fascinating universes in storytelling. There is no easy way to describe him. Some call him a genius, some call him insane, some call him a machine. I prefer to call him a mad genius, and I mean that in an endearing way. But what makes us fans question his sanity, and yet at the same time, we admire him so much despite the little that we do know about him? Let's explore the enigma. Kamachi Kazuma, the mad genius light novel author. Let's start from the origins of Kamachi as a writer. But first, there are a few things that I need to address. Many authors in the light novel industry use a pen name instead of their real name for whatever reason, but usually because they don't want their personal life associated with their work, or simply they just want to remain anonymous. Kamachi is one of those authors. We have no idea what his real name is, or what he actually looks like. So that is the main reason why Kamachi remains such a mysterious figure to us the fans, as only the publishers and the people who have met Kamachi in person know his true identity. As we the fans, myself included, don't know many aspects of who Kamachi is, as his private life is kept, well, private, and he rarely speaks about himself. We can only judge Kamachi via his work, which includes his afterwords, where he addresses his readers directly, the interviews he has conducted, his actions, and what his colleagues have said about him. Now, let's begin his rise to fame. Kamachi was once just a student in Japan who really enjoyed writing novels in his spare time, and in 2002 decided to submit one of these novels called Schrodinger's City to the 9th Dengeki Game Novel Prize. So the awards for this prize consist of the grand prize, which is 3 million yen, the gold prize, which is 1 million yen, and the silver prize of 500,000 yen. In addition to the money received, the winning novelists get their work published under the light novel publisher Dengeki Bunko, with the addition of an artist for the illustrated aspects of the light novels. So Kamachi was basically hoping to get his big break and become a published author by entering this competition. According to Kazuma Miki, an editor at Dengeki Bunko, Schrodinger's City was set in summer about a protagonist who arrives in town where the law was anything you imagine becomes real. You could say the foundation for the story was built on the foundation of a unique and unusual concept, and that later did become a trend with all of Kamachi's other novels. And seemingly Kamachi did adapt some of the basic ideas in his novel for his first published work, A Certain Magical Index, featuring a city with supernatural powers, with a reality warping character called Aureolus Izzard appearing in the second volume. However, Schrodinger's City got the lowest grade of the Dengeki Taisho Award and lost in the third round, described by other editors as being far too rough writing-wise. While I have never read the story myself, and it's probably wrong to judge a book by its cover or the little description we do have of it, I think basing a story around reality warping principles is quite hard to write well, as it would have to be like really well balanced to avoid plot inconsistencies or plot holes, since if you give that kind of power to any character in this universe it can be quite messy, I imagine. But fortunately for Kamachi, Miki decided to read Schrodinger's City and saw the potential in his work. He agreed with the other editors that the manuscript was rough, but the story itself and its narration were actually impressive. Miki notes two things that particularly caught his eye. The first thing was that the narration consistently invoking the main character's personal summer memories, and the main character's imagination bringing a heroine to life wearing a maid outfit and being able to picture that. He thought both of these things were quite interesting, probably the maid outfit more than the first bit, but he immediately contacted Kamachi, and Kamachi would employ the concept and theme of memory in Index, and of course would feature different maid outfits as a gag in his later volumes of Index. Kamachi and Miki stayed in contact for over a year, discussing different ideas for novels and creating several drafts. Kamachi devised an idea that stood above the rest. Kamachi always wanted to write a novel about the supernatural or magic, and became interested in researching if real magic actually existed. From his research, he discovered the more he read, the more he realised that magic became more and more like a science, likely through discovering the life of the real Aleister Crowley and other real-world magicians that employed scientific method into their rituals. Many existing light novels of the time, and in anime and manga in general, had magic as a main theme or concept. However, none of them actually invested much into the inner workings of magic. As such, Kamachi decided to use this as a premise for the series, and he wanted to have a force to oppose magic, so he split magic and science into two power systems and sides of his universe. Therefore, Kamachi was prompted to write a story about the relationship and conflict of magic and science, creating the world of a certain magical index, where magic and science collides, the story begins. And it is also rumoured that Kamachi wrote the first volume of Index when he was only 19 years old, although I don't really have a source or anything to validate this point. But if you do have a credible source, put it in the comments below and I'll include it in the pinned section. But Index was originally titled as Last Memory, but the name of the novel was altered by Miki, who believed the word index had a, quote, strong personality in the sense and direction, end quote, upon his reading of the manuscript. Miki agreed to publish the first volume under Dengeki Bunko and assigned Haimura Kiyotaka, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, to be Kamachi's illustrator. However, it was published as an intended one-shot volume. If the volume was unsuccessful in terms of its sales, that would be it, and likely would mean the end for Kamachi as a published author. A Certain Magical Index was released on the 10th of April 2004, on the 100th anniversary of the Book of the Law, a magical grimoire referenced in the story, which was a real book written by Aleister Crowley, said to bring the end of the Christian Age. Whether it was coincidence or not remains a mystery. Because of this and the appearance of Kamachi's fictionalized version of Aleister, who is the main antagonist of the series, some fans theorize Kamachi to be Aleister in the flesh, or even a reincarnation of Aleister, who died in 1947 in England. This theory sounds completely ludicrous, but even I wouldn't say it's completely impossible. Index anyway was a huge commercial success. The sale figures for Index were not publicly recorded in 2004, so we do not know the exact figure of how many copies of Index were sold in its debut, but Mickey later stated, quote, "To be blunt, it sold like crazy. Shortly after the official release date, we had to do a reprint half the size of the original printing. It was on a Monday. I still remember it now. It was quite an achievement for an unknown newcomer." End quote. Index was quickly given the green light by Dengeki Bunko to be an ongoing series. Volume 2 of Index was released 2 months later on the 10th of June 2004, and Kamachi wrote this volume in just 17 days, which was confirmed to be true by Mickey, which many fans like myself considered to be an incredible achievement given the quality of Volume 2, since it was a pretty good volume, and to complete that in 17 days, like, that's just madness. I guess Kamachi was just really prepared to write a sequel. Now we have covered the origins of Kamachi, let's now cover what defines him. Basically his style, you could say. And I feel like completing Volume 2 in 17 days is self-explanatory for how he operates, and a testament to his work ethic. But if you thought that was impressive, you haven't seen nothing yet. From 2014 to 2016, Kamachi wrote a light novel volume once every month, while also working on spin-off manga and other related projects. While after this point in time, his light novel volume releases became more infrequent and sporadic, this is still very impressive, and Kamachi still has a pretty active schedule to this day. And at the time of this period between 2014 to 16, he still had a year's worth of manuscripts written for all his series in advance. Because of this, some fans regard Kamachi as a machine or artificial intelligence, as surely no human could meet these deadlines and write so much for an extended period of time like he can. Kamachi even addressed this rumour in an actual interview. He stated, quote, "There are rumours to say that Kamachi Kazuma doesn't exist, but the stuff about me being a story writing program in the servers of Dengeki is not true." End quote. Like, I find it fucking hilarious how he actually addresses this like it needed to be disproved. Like, taking the accusation that he might be the Skynet of the light novel industry, it actually blows my mind. We can somewhat explain this because Kamachi's hobby is writing, alongside his actual job of writing. So, for his job he writes, and in his spare time he also writes. I'm getting a Forrest Gump type vibe from this. Honestly, this man deserves a fucking holiday. Like, Kamachi has stated that if he stops writing, he will crash like a plane, and he even continued writing while suffering from the norovirus, which he could have easily taken a hiatus. Like, what kind of drugs is Kamachi on? Like, come on, this guy works his arse off. His work ethic borders on insanity, which leads on nicely to the next quirky characteristic that Kamachi is famous or infamous for: his ideas or concepts. So, in a similar fashion to Hirohiko Araki, who is the mangaka of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, a series that became pretty famous in the West for its meme potential and the unusual and absurd tone in how the story and characters are presented, Kamachi's storytelling and ideas are handled in a bit more seriously overall than JoJo, but he's still not afraid to indulge his stories into batshit craziness at times. But before I give some examples of some of his more obscure and controversial ideas, I want to talk about how these ideas are conceived by Kamachi to begin with. Kamachi was asked how he keeps coming up with new ideas, considering the tremendous pace that he writes new volumes at. Kamachi answered, quote, "Instead of coming up with a schedule and thinking up some ideas at set times, I just save to my computer the little ideas that occasionally pop up into my head, and organise them so I can search through them at any time. That way, when I need an idea, I can search for a specific genre. About 10 or 20 of those little ideas would probably be enough for a short story." End quote. To be writing novels for over 17 years with Index still ongoing, and still having years worth of ideas in advance, is nothing short of impressive, especially since Kamachi seems to create new ideas rather than just reusing old ones. While he does borrow ideas from trends of the light novel industry, such as having a large female cast, aspects of otaku culture like maids and magical girls, and having a girl that appeals to a specific archetype like Mikoto being a tsundere, Kamachi also helped establish trends that were developed by Index to begin with, and were later used by light novel authors in the future. While underdog stories have been a common occurrence in fiction since the dawn of time, having Toma as level 0 or the weakest on paper despite having a strong ability was something that later other light novel authors would feel inspired by, and Kamachi utilising two different power systems and grounding magic with a complex set of laws and rules was also something that made Index stand out from other battle light novels. Kamachi often conducts extensive research to assemble ideas or concepts for his stories, and this is evidenced by his knowledge of both historical and religious figures and events in Index, and his knowledge of scientific concepts in both Railgun and Index. In volume 18 of New Testament, he stated that in the afterword he read Magic in Theory and Practice and Liber 777 by Aleister Crowley to borrow concepts to adapt into the volume. So from this we can gather that Kamachi has read other related works where necessary to flesh out his universe. Now on to some of the most absurd ideas Kamachi has devised in his past. Warning, if you're an Index fan and you don't want to be spoiled on content past the anime, I'd advise clicking off this. On the contrary, if you have no interest in checking out Index and want to hear some bizarre shit out of context, then you'll likely enjoy what I have to say. So, remember how I said Aleister is arguably the main villain of Index? He's over 100 years old. He gets killed, but then transfers his soul into an alternate version of himself, which is the body of a teenage girl. Then, to make matters more weird, he tries to fuck the main protagonist, Toma. That sounds really bad out of context, doesn't it? And somehow, after all that, Aleister is still one of the best characters ever written in my eyes. How, you ask? Guess you'll just have to wait until my character analysis at 5,000 subscribers. But yeah, some shit feels like it could be placed in JoJo, and no one would bat an eye. How about a magical evil fetus that brainwashes its mother and fights Toma using jewels that turn into monsters? How about a talking dog who smokes joints all the time with a Gurren Lagann-esque drill fights a talking killer whale? How about the President of the United States shouting he loves sex on live TV and then has a shotgun duel with the Vice President who is also a magician? And how about ending a volume on a cliffhanger, then introducing a random heatwave in winter, which forces the characters to wear swimsuits, and then giant insects appear with zero foreshadowing and start attacking students? I'm really not doing a good job at making Index sound well written, am I? That's because it's not Aeon. Drink your copium. And I haven't even mentioned some of the shit in his other novels like Zashiki Rawashi, A Simple Series, Blood Sign, or his incest vampire and zombie sister web novel, which I'm sure is a masterpiece of modern literature which will be analysed in Japanese literature class centuries from now. So for me, Kamachi is truly a cult figure. His ideas are sometimes completely absurd, which makes you ponder his sanity, along with his questionable work ethic. And yet, for every idea he drafts that isn't executed well, he has produced some of the most incredible unique ideas I've seen, like the premise and the universe of Index is one of the best fictional universes out there. And his method of storytelling is so refreshing, starting off Index as an episodic battle series in terms of having self-contained arcs, kinda like in the style of Shinichiro Watanabe of Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo, and developing his presentation of the story to a more overarching narrative which touches upon all the past story elements from the previous arcs in order to reach the climax of World War III, which delivers so fucking hard in terms of how good it is. Writing likeable characters that have personality but also flaws and weaknesses they must overcome, complex moralities and ethics where few characters feel one-dimensional, and character development of the main cast so that they are constantly evolving. Kamachi truly has constructed such a memorable and amazing series for me, and you honestly grow to love his batshit crazy ideas because somehow he makes most of them work. But clearly some ideas don't work, as seen in the Kamisato arc for example. But one thing Kamachi is not afraid to do as a writer is taking risks, except when it comes to killing off important characters, which not many authors are prepared to do. By taking risks, you don't always know what crazy theme or concept he's going to play around with next, which is why Index feels fresh to me years later and is a testament to the longevity of the series. While Kamachi may be mad, he's certainly a genius in my eyes, and I just cannot help but love the world he created. So, tell me, what are your opinions about Kamachi Sensei? Let me know in the comments below, and I just want to say thank you so much for 4K subscribers. Like, the channel has been doing really well lately, which is honestly great to see, as you guys inspire and motivate me to keep creating content for the channel. And I honestly never thought I would get to 200 subs, let alone 4,000. So again, thank you so much. And yeah, I'd love to be able to get to 5,000, and I'll definitely be celebrating with a few drinks if I do. And of course, releasing a long-ass Alistair character analysis if I do get there, as my way to pay you guys back for support since day one. So if you enjoyed the video, then please like and share it, as that is always a massive help to the channel. Anyways, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.